Hi, as promised, this is a long review of the 35mm f1.4 compared to the 50mm f2 for Fujifilm, of course. So you saw the short video I did a few weeks ago, and this is just going to be step by step, and every choice I made, I'm going to try to explain it. So let's go, let's see, what have we here? Alright, price is quite straightforward. So the funny thing is, a few months ago the 35mm f1.4 would have been cheaper. I must say a few years ago, but Fuji has gone on an aggressive campaign to get the prices up, and because it's quite an aging lens, I feel the 50mm really wins it, because you'll get better lenses on the used market for the 50 than for the 35, and people tend to love their 35s
yeah.
and feel quite indifferent with the 50 because there's the 56 1.2. So yep, that's definitely a win for the 50. Weather resistance, well, Dad likes taking pictures in the rain. The 35 1.4 is certainly not a resistant lens. It actually cost me a trip to Fuji for my XT2 because it let some sand in, and the sand lodged itself under the sensor. I don't know how it got there, but ruined my sensor on the XT2. So and that was a 35 for sure. Never had any problem with the 50 even in the rain. So yep, I recommend. Better resistance works. Okay, luminosity is quite simple and straightforward. With f1.4, twice as more light as f2, and also because at 1.4 the 35 has this very specific look, I'll definitely recommend, because you can take pictures at 1.4, especially portraits. Yep, points for the 35mm. Okay, sharpness. This one definitely goes to the 50mm f2. There's like no comparison. The 50 is sharper, both in the center and on the sides, at all moments, except at f4, when I find the 35 to be quite excellent.
Welcome to Pixel Peepers.
I mean, they are both very, very sharp in the center. There's nothing to say about that. It's brilliant generally, and in a studio environment where you are at f4 or f5.6, then both lenses are. Reach is definitely a 50mm win. That's quite simple, but that's, depending on what you like. I actually tend to like having additional reach, so generally speaking.
I feel like there's a dirty joke somewhere here, but I just can't quite put my finger on it.
Portrait quality is a very difficult one. I tend to say that the 35mm f1.4 gives better portraits, but we'll have to admit that it does change the face of the subject, and I find that with my family it doesn't matter, and Aude actually has a face which can be deformed slightly and still be beautiful. Yeah, some people will feel the distortion more, and so the 50 will certainly come in handy there. Also, it depends how you feel about taking pictures in your face, because the 35mm you will be closer. So I've already talked about how the 35 can allow you to take better pictures in a restaurant compared to the 50mm, where it's actually better in an everyday situation, I guess, where you have more distance between the subject and you. That's one thing too, because the 35 and the 50 have, of course, different maximum aperture, but because the 50 has a longer reach, the effect on how much blur you can get on the face is actually quite comparable, and the only difference will be that the 50 will bring the background a bit more. So you will have a bit of a, I don't know if there's a technical term for that, but the background will be smaller. So the close focus is definitely a 35mm win. You get great separation, and even in accounting for the different length, the magnification is actually greater on the 35mm. So yep, it's the best. It's actually nearly a macro lens. Nah, it's not, but it's really, I mean, if you like taking picture of coffee cups in a coffee, the 35 is the one to go. Alright, you don't need to be on this video to know how faster the 50mm f2 autofocus is. It's twice or 3 times as fast. It's even faster on the older bodies. So yep, 50mm win every day. Okay, this is a quick shot of things where the 50mm is actually better than the 35, but I don't feel they have any kind of importance. So bokeh is actually better. Bokeh. Bokeh. I don't know. Anyway, the bokeh balls. This sounds like something you should be eating. Bokeh balls. Okay, so the bokeh is better on the 50mm. It's rounder and it's normal because due to the amount of aperture blades on the 50mm compared to the 35. But I kind of like the look of out of focus on the 35. So yeah, I don't care. Compacity is definitely slight win for the 50, but it won't change much. Build quality, again, the 50 wins, but the my 35 is X years old and it's still great, so don't have much to say about that. And filter size, yeah, the 50mm will need cheaper filters. So, but if you're like me and you have one big filter with a reduction ring, so you won't care much. This one I did not know whether I should give it to the 35 or give it an equal in versatility. I find both lenses to be good everyday lenses, but again, it's because I rarely have my back against a wall when I take everyday pictures, so the 50 does work. I find that inside or during winter, actually the 35 is a better lens. So it really depends where you live. On this one, I'm not honest at all. The 35 is my favorite lens, and that's it. And I can't explain why. I tried, and it's by far the biggest video on this channel. I don't understand why. I think it's because I followed the news with the 33mm arriving. But one thing I want you to know is those two are never compared on internet, or hardly ever. And I really find it's a shame because they are really closer than people might think they are. I think the 50 f2 is a better alternative to the 35 f1.4 than the 35 f2 is. Not to say that the 35 f2 is a bad lens, and we've talked about it a lot in the comments on the previous video, but yeah, I feel that you can get similar portrait, you can get similar look with definitely technically better lens with the 50 f2 than with the 35 f1.4. I know I'm one of those which exaggerates the qualities of the 35mm f1.4, but I also want to say that the 50 f2 is probably one of the most underrated lens in the Fuji lineup. It's absolutely great. It's sharp, tack sharp. It's fast. It's weather resistant. So really, really worth it, and it's quite affordable too. So don't hesitate. I'll give 2 thumbs up for the 50 f2. I'll even admit it's superior to the 35 f1.4 in nearly every aspect, but I'll still keep the 35 because I love it, and I don't have to ask much questions because I have both. So yep, my 2 favorite ones. Here you go. Well, have a good day.